The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, June 25th, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn. Journalist Matt Stroud, author of Thin Blue Lie, The Failure of High-Tech Policing. Also on the program today, President Trump denied, and the White House, meanwhile, creating all sorts of bizarre new legal theories to obstruct congressional oversight. Meanwhile, Lula gets a hearing in the Brazilian Supreme Court. And on the eve of the debate, Joe Biden holds steady. Bernie and Warren gain in a national poll. Beto O'Rourke, however, introduces his war tax.
Just run for Senate, dude.
And Stephen Moore's last refuge. If he can't sit on the Fed of the United States, then he'll make his own central bank for crypto. All this and more on today's program. Yes, that is not a joke. That is the truth.
Oh, man, a lot of marks.
Couple of things. Don't generally tease stuff that will come up in the show because it's always usually just great anyways. And it would seem redundant to do that. However, today, we came in. There was, of course, a huge blockbuster report by James O'Keefe on how Google is suppressing the right. And little did we know, and people probably don't know about this partly because it's fictional. We have a Dropbox, a digital Dropbox, where we can get all sorts of leaks and whatnot. And someone leaked to us the first cut of the now famous Google insider interview that James O'Keefe did. And this one's even more devastating.
Not sure why we want to play it even.
They're leaving a lot on the cutting room floor.
It's amazing. But we will play that later in the program, so make sure you stick around for that. Thank you for joining us. We have a full complement of people here today for your listening pleasure. Let's go right in to Donald Trump is attempting to argue that, well, let's start with number 3 first, and then we'll go to number 2. Does that make sense? Donald Trump, of course, engaged in a war of words with Iran. And, of course, what better way to demean your enemy than to forget that they're dead? Here is Donald Trump saying that he has signed an executive order to further sanctions against Ayatollah Khomeini, who died over a decade ago.
Doesn't save you.
Sanctions imposed through the executive order that I'm about to sign will deny the Supreme Leader and the Supreme Leader's office and those closely affiliated with him and the office access to key financial resources and support. The assets of Ayatollah Khomeini and his office will not be spared from the sanctions. These measures represent a strong and proportionate response to Iran's increasingly provocative actions. We will continue to increase pressure on Tehran until the regime abandons its dangerous activities and its aspirations, including the pursuit of nuclear weapons, increased enrichment of uranium, development of ballistic missiles, engagement in and support for terrorism, fueling of foreign conflicts, and belligerent acts directed against the United States and its allies.
Now, first off, I mean, how many more sanctions can we impose on Iran? Seems...
Well, these are distinct. I mean, these are ratcheting up and getting, targeting specific members of the government.
I don't know why that wasn't started the first time.
Well, to the extent they were rolled back as part of the deal, I think. I mean,
I thought that's what we had changed when we left the deal.
Well, when we left the deal, the first things they hit were things like medicine and others. So, if Trump's concerned about 150 people dying, the sanctions have already killed well over that.
So the Ayatollah Khomeini, of course, has been dead for decades, and
that's right.
Apparently, nobody knows that in the White House, or I don't understand how that happened.
Khomeini.
Do you think he pronounced it? He just pronounced it wrong?
I think I would be shocked if he. I don't know if he knows the difference, but it's a close enough pronunciation that somebody like Trump could easily screw it up.
All right. Well, there you go. But more importantly than Trump not really having done a first pass read on that, is that Trump is convinced. And look, Donald Trump obviously has no sense of how our government works. So to the extent that he has an opinion on the separation of powers, it is a function of what he's being told by his advisors. Advisors who we now know are extremely invested in the United States attacking Iran. And here he is explaining how he does not need congressional authorization to strike Iran.
I like the idea of keeping Congress abreast, but I wouldn't have to do that.
Sure. Nancy Pelosi actually said you must have congressional approval, so you disagree with her on that?
I disagree. I think most people seem to disagree, but I do like keeping them. They have ideas, that intelligent people, they'll come up with some thoughts. I actually learned a couple of things the other day when we had our meeting with Congress, which were, I think, helpful to me. But I do like keeping them abreast, but I don't have to do it legally.
Someone does not want sole responsibility for a disaster.
Fact check. He's never learned anything.
Right.
And they're saying that this is covered under the AUMF, which is why they've been regurgitating a lie about Iran being connected with al-Qaeda, which is an even more extravagant lie than Iraq being connected with al-Qaeda.
And it also, emphasizes what a big deal and what the necessity, the Democratic Congress, anyways, the Democratic House, rolling back the AUMF. So obviously not. You need the Senate to sign off on that, and you need it veto-proof, but that's a big deal. Moving at least in the correct direction. Hey, folks, one of today's sponsors is Skillshare. Anyone who goes to skl.sh/Majority Report 4 is going to get 2 whole months of totally free access to Skillshare's entire library, super quality online courses and tutorials. Skillshare is a vibrant online learning community that offers courses on everything from design to video editing, photography, business, technology, cooking, meditation, everything in between. There are Skillshare courses for everyone. You'll have no problem finding courses that will be useful to you, both in your personal and professional life. Whether you want to sharpen your skills with something you already love doing or when you want to learn something totally new, Skillshare has you covered. They got courses for entrepreneurs. They got courses on computer coding. They got courses on web development. They got courses on personal nutrition, learning new languages, Photoshop, you name it. Now, my plan was this past weekend to get into some of that, what do you call it? The conscious dreaming? What is it?
Lucid dreaming.
Lucid dreaming.
You should know this by now.
And I had the lucid dreaming. I got to pull this up here. I had lucid dreaming queued up for me. I
It was
had
1982 in Worcester. My mother was reading me a Social Security report.
I was going to use this because I've starred a bunch of ones that I'm going to do. I was going to use this productivity with Evernote because I've been trying to figure out how to use that for a long time. Productivity habits that stick, using time theming. And, of course, I got completely waylaid because I haven't taken these yet, and by my kids. So I know when I'm doing this, the July 4th recess that we'll be on. I'm going to be doing a bunch of those. Folks are going to see a marked change in my productivity. And now you can get 2 entire months of free access to every single course offered by Skillshare by going to skl.sh/majority-report-4. Just think of everything at your fingertips for 2 whole months. Again, that's skl.sh/majority-report-4. I put a link underneath this video. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening to the podcast, it's in the podcast description. Check it out. Really cool stuff. Stuff that I think you'll be happy to learn. Should always continue to learn, folks. Very important.
Like Trump in meetings with Democrats.
With Trump and meeting with... In fact, let me see if there's a... Nope. Not a class on that. On bipartisanship. We're going to take a quick break. We come back. Matt Stroud. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program CEO and executive editor of Post Industrial Media and author of Thin Blue Lie, The Failures of High-Tech Policing, Matt Stroud. Matt, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, let's just start with by what measure are you measuring the success or failure of this element of policing, this introduction of sort of high-tech equipment?
Well, I'm not a statistician. It's more, I'm a journalist, and so I'm relying on what I've seen in my reporting. And really the crux of what I started with, and a lot of the reporting that I do in the book is built around the taser weapon and the company that created that. And so what I'm looking at is the promises of the taser weapon when it was first introduced, and when Jack Cover, the inventor of the taser, decided that he was going to take it to different police departments and try to sell it, and what he was telling those police departments, and how it has evolved over time and how it's used. And so a weapon that is that is pitched as being a non-lethal weapon and is pitched that way for years and years, that ends up being involved in the killing of more than 1,000 people. I view that as being negative.
Right. Okay, good. So, I mean, that is, so let's start with that, the promise of the taser. What was the thinking behind the taser, and give us a sense. I mean, this is basically something that came into its own, I guess, around the turn of this century. But tell us what led to the development of the taser, and then what ostensibly it was supposed to do for us.
The taser was developed in the wake of police incidences that will be familiar to anyone who is listening to this show, right? So in the 60s and 70s, you had incidences of extreme violence that were going on between people in the community and the police in big cities, in Los Angeles, places like that. And this guy, Jack Cover, who was an engineer and an executive with Hughes Aircraft, saw these things happening and said, I think that there is a market for a non-lethal weapon. And he had the innovation. He had the idea that he wanted to take an electric fence and shoot it out of a gun. That was the idea. And the concept beyond that was that he wanted to give police a non-lethal tool that could de-escalate a situation immediately without having to kill or beat or otherwise brutalize somebody on the street. So that's where it started.
I mean, those sounds like fairly, I think, legit goals. What? Tell us how it developed.
Well, over the first, 10 years or so, Jack was not very successful selling the weapon at all. But then, in the wake of a woman being killed in Los Angeles by LAPD officers, Eula Love is her name. There was a lot of consternation. There were protests about her death, and the LAPD decided that they were going to have to look for a non-lethal tool like this, and so they went and purchased a weapon. What happened over years, though, Jack Cover had his companies, which largely failed, and then two brothers from Scottsdale, Arizona, picked up the idea and changed the patent to strengthen the power of the device itself. And so that's really what happened over the years. Like, Jack Cover developed a device that seemed through his research to be safe, like it was non-lethal. Though he told people when he was selling this, there's no guarantee that this is not going to kill people, but basically I believe that the power levels are set so that it won't actually cause people to go into cardiac arrest. And police over the years started asking for a stronger and stronger and stronger weapon. They were finding that they would use it on suspects, and the power wasn't sufficient enough to bring them to the ground. And so they asked for increased power, and the Smith brothers decided to do this. I mean, Jack Cover did it initially, ramped up the power, and then the Smith brothers ramped up the power quite a bit. To 26 watts was eventually where they got. And when it was ramped up to that power level, they became more and more dangerous. And so that's where we ran into problems of people being tasered and then dying.
When was essentially it follows that LA the adoption by the LA Police Department? When was the sort of like broader? When did we hit 50% saturation? Let's say.
Oh, that's a tough one. So they're at about 100% saturation right now.
Right.
I would say that they were going through their biggest period of growth around 2003, 2004. But I don't have the SEC documents in front of me right now. I would say that. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm asking because there's a couple of things that are going on there. It seems to me that at that point you're starting to get police departments having a lot of Department of Homeland Security type funding. How much of this was a function of it being adopted by the LA Police Department? How much of it was a function of we have a budget now for stuff like this?
Well, there were federal dollars that were put toward this kind of weapon in the wake of 9/11. I think a lot of it was branding and marketing. Like Taser International did some really interesting work by and sales by essentially deputizing police officers to be trainers. And so they would go into, you have a police officer from one organization, from one police department, goes into a police department in another part of the county, say, and they train officers there on how to use the taser. And then in the process, it's like a Mary Kay Cosmetics thing. They're selling as well as training how to use it. They're like a Tupperware party kind of. And so this was happening all over the country. And because of that, because of the attention that taser was garnering, because it was kind of a new and interesting tool that was being used by police departments, and also because it was a publicly traded company and they were doing a lot to market the business on Wall Street and around it, you had a lot of attention being paid to this weapon. So, yes, it was the federal dollars becoming available that allowed police departments to spend a little bit more money on it. But since it was being marketed and since police chiefs around the country, remember there are 18,000 police departments across the country, as they get more and more information about the taser and they realize that their police want it, they start lobbying city councils and mayors to allocate funding for these weapons, and it spread.
And so give us a sense of its failure. I mean, do we know? I mean, I guess it's hard to sort of say, like, how many people would be dead if we didn't have tasers? But I imagine, do we have a sense of how many times these things are unholstered versus guns? Like, what are the measures in which you use to sort of, if 1,000 people are dead, then clearly it has not necessarily decreased, I guess, deaths at the hand of cops, or has it? I mean, because we don't really have enough data on all of this on some level, do we?
That's part of the argument that I'm making in the book, is that we really don't know. There really aren't metrics to tell us whether these weapons are effective or not. And so all we can do is look at the periphery. So even the deaths, like, there's no federal agency that's looking into the number of people who were killed by police officers using taser weapons. Like, the count does not exist. There was a blog, the resource right now, the main resource that has been counting the number of people killed by tasers is a blog made by somebody whose brother was killed in a circumstance where a police officer used a taser. This is outside of Toronto. And her blog is called Truth Not Tasers. And every time there's a media report of somebody dying after being shocked with a taser, she puts it there. And so that's been the number. And then there was a Reuters investigation a couple of years back that backed up a lot of what she had done and came up with their own count. And also, they verified that it was over 1,000 people who had been killed by these weapons. And so that's a metric you can look at. There are also reports that have come out from different agencies themselves talking about the failure rate of tasers. There was an internal study that was shared in a media story out in Los Angeles through the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department that showed that tasers, they failed half the time. So half the time they were unholstered and used on a suspect, they would fail. And so we have data like that show at least where the question should be about whether these devices should continue to be used. And we have some idea on what should be collected, what data should be collected. But you're correct. There's really not a lot for us to base our decisions on from verifiable sources.
What is the perspective of police that you've interviewed as to tasers? I mean, is there a general sentiment about them? Do they like them at this point? I mean, I understand you write that, early adoption, people were pretty excited about it. Is that enthusiasm for tasers still there?
I think with a lot of police that I spoke with, there was, mostly because it's another tool that they can use, right? It's another weapon that, they can have on their belt, that they have access to if the circumstance should require it. But most of the cops I talk to don't use them very frequently. And when they use them, it's an anomaly, which is, ultimately a pretty good thing. The marketing by Taser International early on was taser early and often. And I think enough attention has been paid by people in media, as well as people in courtrooms. I mean, Taser International has been sued many, many, many times. A lot of this stuff has gotten attention. I think because of all of that attention, police officers tend to try to use tasers as infrequently as possible. But you do still see, videos pop up all the time of people, police officers who are in circumstances where it really doesn't seem like they should be using a weapon, where somebody's unarmed or, has their hands behind their back and they're sitting on the ground, and all of a sudden an officer reaches for a taser. That's really what we're trying to avoid here.
So, all right. So tasers are, I guess you would say, tactical technology, right?
Sure.
You also write about the CompStat system, which is more of like a strategic, I guess, technology. Tell us about that and its efficacy.
CompStat was basically the first tool that was used to try to take police data and use it in a way that was, as you say, strategic. Like, what Bill Bratton and Jack Maple, who were leaders in the NYPD, had done prior to taking leadership roles at NYPD. They would look at crimes, and they would get crime statistics, and then they would plot those points where crimes had occurred onto a wall, onto like a map on a wall. And all CompStat was CompStat did two things. First of all, it allowed them to use computers to map out where those crimes were happening, and then so that they had some real strategy about how to go after specific crimes and how to identify when specific crimes were happening in certain areas and how to approach those. They would have these regular meetings with everybody, all of the precinct commanders in the NYPD, where they could talk about the numbers and what the numbers showed and how they were planning to go about stopping the crimes as they were happening. And so that is CompStat on a very basic level and how it developed. So we talk about that in a moment.
And my understanding, as you write, is that it's the sort of the secondary implications of CompStat that were really the most effective aspects about it. Is it basically gave everybody, it's almost as if it asked the right questions, and it required middle management, I guess, to show up and answer the questions and think about the questions.
Yeah, that was part of it. I mean, strategy is really the key here. It got police thinking about, okay, here's some data. Here are actual figures that we can look at that show us what's happening on the street, and now we need to think about how to approach. Where some problems emerge after that is in the aggressiveness that a lot of those precinct commanders would take in trying to stop crimes as they were occurring. It got to be pretty brutal.
And to what extent was this a technology that traveled throughout the country?
I mean, it has traveled throughout the country pretty significantly. CompStat is the precursor to predictive policing, and I said it before, there are 18,000 police departments in the United States. A lot of them are really small, and so the smaller departments that I'm familiar with aren't using analytics as much as larger ones, but basically every major police department in the country is using crime statistics and predictive analytics, or analytics of some sort, to figure out which crimes are happening and how they can deploy resources to best take advantage of it. So I wouldn't say that it's 100% market saturation, but it's probably 70-75% of police departments use data in a way that follows along with what was started with CompStat.
Has it been successful?
I think that the use of data has been helpful for police departments to understand how they should deploy their resources. And so it's been helpful in that way. Like police understand better like who they're arresting and who they want to be arresting. I think where it has been unhelpful is where you end up deploying resources to places where police officers are essentially fueling. They're sending resources to places that are high crime areas, and all of a sudden, and those areas end up becoming places where they conduct more arrests, and you're having high crime areas that are just being flooded with police officers, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that you have data that is pointing you in the direction of a particular neighborhood, and then all of a sudden you have many police officers there that are conducting more arrests and making that area worse, and conducting surveillance in those areas. And so that kind of expansion of CompStat has moved in the wrong direction, I think, but data is always helpful for doing policing better.
So how much of this dynamic overall is a function of, we have significant drops in crime all across the country. There are some spots where it hasn't been as dramatic, and maybe some spots where, there hasn't been really a drop per se. But in almost every category of serious crime, it has been dropping precipitously over the past 20 some odd years now. Right? How much of this dynamic, and nobody's really quite sure why. The theories range from barring lead in gasoline to, well, that's a legit theory.
Sure, absolutely.
That I think, there's some data that supports it internationally as well, that 25 years after lead is taken out of gasoline, there's a big drop in crime, and it seems to be durable. Whatever has caused this drop in crime. How much of what we see going on is sort of police departments having to, I don't want to say busy work, but having to create a narrative that suggests that that police work is really the way to inhibit crime as opposed to other factors? Obviously,
how much of it?
Well, obviously at the margins, right? Police work has, obviously implications. But if the biggest drop in crime that we've had, possibly ever in the context of the country, is really a function of just environmental factors that were, a bank shot on something that nobody anticipated, but we're just not pumping neurotoxins into the air. How much of what police departments are doing today is a function of trying to build a narrative that their work is perhaps more responsible for this drop in crime than it is? I'm not suggesting there's a conspiracy, but I'm just saying that, everybody likes to think what they're doing is important.
Yeah. Police chiefs, in particular, police leaders, are always going to go to the government leaders in their cities and try to get an increased budget. They're going to try to get funding to do more things. I don't know that you can say, who would be in charge of that marketing effort that you're talking about, right? To make it seem as though police are more responsible for the drop in crime than they are. So I think that you always have police leaders who are making the argument that their budget should increase, that they should have more cops on the street, that their work is valuable. And I think that happens. What is always surprising to me is that while they could argue for increased budgets to bring on more police officers, they have been moving in the direction of making budget requests to get the kinds of tools that are right about in the book. So, body cameras, tasers, facial recognition technology. And all of that stuff is really expensive. And so it has surprised me in researching this book how much of the lobbying and marketing that police leaders are doing is now being directed toward trying to get funding to purchase these tools rather than expand the footprint of the police department, get more people hired. And I'm not sure why.
I was just about to ask, like, I mean, why do you think that is? Is it a function of like there's a push dynamic that's going on, that union leaders aren't pushing as hard as, people who can come in with smaller, sort of technological innovations? Or is it, having had a little bit of exposure to police, there's also sort of a quality of some of, elements of the police like to have a gear. And that it's just sort of makes you feel good. I mean, I guess that was more of what I was asking. Not that there's someone who's conspiring to make it seem like what they do is having impact on crime. But I mean, I can tell you just if I have someone on my podcast team who's in charge of social media, that becomes the most important thing that can be done to grow the show, right? I mean, that's just inevitable. And so it's like we need to get this technology to do our Instagram account or whatever it is. I mean, so I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is like, what are the forces that are driving the increase in technology, and why is that not as inhibited by expense in a way that, like, if we could put, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000 more police on the streets and have them more just engaged in the community and maybe less, surveillance and more just sort of like service type of stuff?
I mean, you would have to have a complete change in a lot, right? So one of the things that I think is contributing to what we're talking about is that there are big companies now that are marketing these tools to police departments, and they have meetings. The International Association of Chiefs of Police has an annual meeting every year at a different city, and you go to those events, and there is an entire room, like conference room, filled with all the different kinds of tools and technologies that you can purchase. So I think there's a bit of a geek factor there. I think there's also a bit of a factor related to police thinking of themselves and thinking like, if when I retire, there is an opportunity for me to get into this business. I think there's some of that going on. I think that police leaders are just being marketed to so intensely, and they are thinking like, maybe this is a necessary tool. Maybe this is going to allow me to do more with less. And that kind of thinking happens quite a bit, and they're being pitched to constantly with that kind of message. And so I think that I call it a police industrial complex, and that is what I think it is developing into. And that is part of the reason why you don't have the kind of union expansion and pushes for more hiring that replaces this idea of marketing for these tools and these businesses. There's business there, and people want to make money.
Where is that money coming from that they're expending? Like, is it coming at the expense?
Police are expending?
Yeah, is it coming at the expense of hiring? What's that? Well,
you and me.
No, but I mean, has there been an increase? I mean, is it an increase in local dollars? Is it there more federal dollars going in there? I mean, like, presumably, are they doing it at the expense of actual cops? Right? Like, I mean, if they're buying an increase in technology that there was no market for 20 years ago, is that money coming in an increase in taxes? Is it coming because there's other things being cut? Is that taxes local, or is that taxes federal? That money's going back to these police departments?
I mean, you have increasing budgets for police just across the country, and I pull out some numbers in the book, but the increase is astronomical in the amount of real money and real dollars that has been expended on policing. It's really a lot of money that's being spent. And so, every government is different. I keep on saying that there are all these police departments around the country, 18,000 of them. Each one of them is going to be unique. There's going to be different parts of budgets that are going to be overtaken by police budgets all over the place. But there are additional federal dollars that are being pumped into police departments to pay for technology. One of the most prominent recent examples being in the wake of Mike Brown being shot and killed by Darren Wilson in Ferguson, Missouri. You have a $75 million block grant that's allocated to police departments that want to purchase body cameras. So there is an infusion from the federal government to pay for these kinds of tools, but it's also city leaders making decisions that, I guess we need to spend more money on tools and weaponry and on police in general. And so that's been a trend over the last, 40, 50 years.
It's fascinating stuff. Matt Stroud, the book is Thin Blue Lie, The Failure of High-Tech Policing. Thanks so much for your time today. We'll put a link to that book on majority.fm.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. Let's do a couple of things. First off, some breaking news that just came across my transom, as it were. According to the New York Times, the acting border protection chief is resigning. John Sanders expected, the acting one, because we don't have an existing one anyways, is expected to step down as public fury mounts over the treatment of detained immigrant children. Comes as the Trump administration said it was transferring children back to the Texas shelter that was criticized for overcrowding and filthy conditions. I heard a report from one of the lawyers. It's not the lawyer that we played yesterday, but one of the other lawyers who apparently they tour these facilities. And they generally don't go public with anything that they see. It's a way that they can sort of like advocate for folks without it being sort of politicized, I guess, in a way, where they can work with people. But they said that what they found was so appalling that they had to go public with it. But the story was that they were in the facility and they had seen like an increase in numbers and they couldn't quite figure out how this was possible because the facility was only supposed to hold like a third of the number of kids that were on the docket. And they were going down the docket and all the numbers of the ages were 0, 1, 2. And apparently they were driving around the facility and they saw what amounted to one of those like prefab steel buildings that you can buy. Right? You must see those up you see them in rural areas. You can buy prefabricated steel buildings that are basically just hangars. They, will be the size of like a large hothouse type of thing, but no windows. And apparently that's basically where they were warehousing these kids. And this is, what our country does. So we're number one.
God, when right-wing ghouls are quitting and or getting fired because they don't want to enforce this stuff, it's bad.
Well, that's the question. It's unclear from this story whether this person is resigning in protest or is resigning because they say we have to make it look like we're doing something. Like the problem isn't the policy, it's the personnel. So we're getting rid of you as some type of like a sacrifice to the gods of, here it is. There's more here. The official who confirmed his resignation, who requested anonymity because he was not authorized to discuss the matter, said it was not clear whether the impending resignation was connected to recent criticism over the agency management of a large influx of migrant families along the border. Even if it was associated with the criticism, it's not clear whether this is someone who had a conscience or someone who was like, "Oi, this is going to be bad for me. How am I going to advocate for this private prison gig that I had lined up if I'm associated with the guy who puts babies in steel hothouses?" Or if it's just a matter of Mick Mulvaney saying, we got to make this story go away, who do we got to fire to make it look like we fixed the problem? Here's and I don't think this is going to come as a surprise to anybody listening to the sound of my voice right now. There is no getting rid of middle management personnel to take care of this problem. We're getting rid of an acting person who's probably the second or third acting head of whatever division this is. There is a problem that obviously this is an ideology. This is an ideology. Donald Trump and those people who elected him are promoting and are encouraging, which is not to say that there wasn't deep problems with our immigration policy prior to Donald Trump, but the sadism, the impetus for this stuff, it's horrific. It really is horrific. We may talk a little bit more about that as thing, but we'll obviously follow this story. Should we do the? God. Should we do the? We should probably do the
scoop.
Yeah, the scoop. But also, this is amazing. Take a look at this. There's a contest. I don't know if I want to get into this. Oh my gosh. You're all going to freak out. You're all going to freak out. You see this? So just as a public service, let me just read off this Andrew Yang tweet. I will give $1,000 a month for the next 12 months free to someone who retweets this and follows me by July 4th. Let's show why money is the answer and why this is the campaign for people. No purchase necessary. U.S. citizens only.
Man,
I just don't know how much I want to spend, having my Twitter mentions.
Yeah, careful. That Yang gang can be very menacing.
Oh, whatever. Don't be like that. They're fine. They're fine. I just feel bad for all the asthma attacks we're causing when we criticize them. But, I wanted to give him credit because he has come out sympathetic to Bernie's debt relief proposal, but then he's got to do this. Andrew. Andrew.
Hey, at least they took SSDI off the table.
Did they?
You saw that they clarified that it's going to be SSI but not SSDI. So,
you know what? Look, why can't you just say in addition to Medicare for all, free college, and a complete universal system funded by things like Wall Street taxes, I say add UBI onto it. I'll meet you halfway.
Yeah, but the reason he said disability instead of specifying at the beginning is because he wanted to talk to both sides of his mouth at the same time.
Well, look, I don't have any sense of why he did this, but I mean, did we misinterpret what he said to Dave Rubin?
Oh, no. He's since clarified that when he said disability, he wasn't. SSDI is safe, so he just means SSI.
Social Security insurance.
Yeah.
He wants to get rid of Social Security insurance.
That's one of the things that he's going to get rid of, but I said SSDI.
I'm sorry, wait a second. He wants to get rid of Social Security insurance?
That's one of the things that will not stack with Yang bucks.
Social Security, as in Social Security?
SSI, I don't know. Because I don't think it's just basic Social Security. I think SSI is a separate program. I'm not an expert on it.
I have to look into it.
You mean like the stuff that like Paul Ryan got? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Like orphan and widow?
It could be stuff like that. I think there's about 6 million people that exclusively get SSI and not any other of those programs.
Man, if Paul Ryan knew he could just get a direct cash transfer, he would have killed his dad.
Supplemental security income.
Oh, those are welfare programs, right?
Yeah, and they're unapologetic about canceling those out.
Well, right, yeah, and that's the libertarian kind of right-wing tinge of it.
It seems you've engaged in quite a bit of discourse about this subject while I was away.
But what was he referring to when he said, when Dave Rubin said, all these welfare programs are boondoggles.
Should I pull it back up?
Yeah, let's go back over this again. I mean, I really didn't want to do this.
Oh, my God. This is a Godfather 3 moment.
But wait a second.
The Yang Gang pulls us back in.
I just want to know, if I follow him right now, am I eligible for the $1,000? You got a retweet?
Yeah, and it can't be like a smart-ass quote tweet. It's got to just be a straight-up retweet.
I feel like I would do it for
Not
$5,000. Or a guaranteed $250 a month. Like, I would either do it for to go into the lottery for $5,000, or if you gave me a guaranteed $250 a month, I would do it. But yeah, let's just listen to it again. Maybe I misunderstood, because I want to be, I've been quite clear about my problems with the UBI. Michael sort of alluded to it there, is that I am totally down with giving cash universally to everyone, as long as it doesn't eliminate. And yes, there are programs that I think are problematic. AFDC was better than TANF because we had a problem when we realized when there weren't as many jobs. I have a problem with block granting this stuff and allowing certain states dealing with it. Yes, I do. But the idea that it's conceptually, like you're not even going to talk about the program, just the idea of providing things like automatic economic stabilizers that kick in during times when the economy is gone south, when people lose jobs, or stabilizing when people have, other sort of financial, catastrophes. Or just broadly support for folks who have a higher need. I have a problem with eliminating that, generically speaking. But maybe he said something more specific in this and I just missed it.
Give or take. All right, so why not take the $600 billion that are on programs that we know are creating as many problems probably as they're fixing, if not more, and then do it that way? Like, do you think, because it almost feels like it's like a little bit of a stopgap, that you'd still have to get to that problem eventually?
Well, that's the beauty of this, the freedom dividend proposal, is that you have this $600 billion or so, and then you're saying, hey, guess what? Like, it's now a new right of citizenship, everyone gets it. And then what's going to happen is you're going to dramatically reduce the enrollment in these programs very, very quickly, because a lot of people will be like, I prefer the cash. And then this new incoming population would just opt for the dividend and then never end up on these welfare programs. So you'd end up shrinking the enrollments over time in the way you described. You just wouldn't do it all at once, because there are a lot of people in very distinct situations. And this is actually much more politically feasible and popular than going and trying to tear these programs up and from the roots up.
Yeah. Are you worried though?
Okay, hold on for a second. So there are people in different. So he said the reason why you wouldn't you would do it this way because there are people in distinct situations, and it also is politically more palatable to do it this way.
Yeah, it's non-reformist welfare reform.
But he says, as you described, so I think that seems like agreement with Ruben.
Seems like an agreement with the frame. And I always, this is where I always come up with the New York slumlord example, which is you hear stories, and it's a common practice in the city, that aggressive landlords get people out who are in rent-stabilized apartments, but maybe they're totally not liquid and cash-strapped. And they offer them something, and I've seen things like insane, like
sure
$5,000 to leave an apartment.
Oh, I've seen much bigger,
or what I'm saying even less, right? Like
okay.
I'm saying as a point of like the long-term play for a family is it's better, if you can, to keep that apartment and that housing security, but you're so strapped for cash that you might take that short-term deal that makes more sense. So, and I can just knowing like being in a position where maybe cumulatively housing programs, food stamps, and so on is what's literally keeping a roof over your head. But if you have absolutely no cash flow, the appeal of the immediate sort of payoff is going to be very strong, and it might be a really bad long-term bargain for people that are really vulnerable. And that's why I have a fundamental problem with that.
The long-term bargain
trade-off.
is that you're weakening the existence of these programs.
Precisely.
And so it's a political one. I mean, look, I'm trying to figure out what the $600 billion is that they're referring to, right? I mean, because this guy, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He either knows what Dave Rubin's talking about when Dave Rubin says $600 billion annually, or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, he should. All right, let's go before that.
So why not just blow apart? So I think the best libertarian argument that I've heard for UBI is that basically if you want to do UBI, it's got the right idea. Why not just blow apart the social safety net as is, because we know it's just a boondoggle of middle management nonsense with all the whacked out incentives that you're talking about. Why not just take all of that money, do we even know how much money is actually put into these things?
Of course.
So how much right now?
600 billion, give or take.
Give or take. All right, so why not take the 600 billion?
Oh, okay. So his $600 billion. So I'm curious what he's talking about, because I mean, it's not Medicaid and it's not Medicaid, presumably. It's not CHIP, right? Which is children's health insurance programs that are add-ons to that. TAMF is federal block grants. I don't like block grants. That's problematic because you're leaving it up to the state to distribute it, but that's basically the best they could do. You have the earned income tax credit, which is basically a payment. You have the child tax credit. You have WIC, which is special nutrition program for women, infants, and children. Right? Like, when you have babies, it may be your need for money is more and maybe different than it would be a couple years later when you get that extra grand. And I guess maybe the idea is like, well, you should have saved to, in anticipation of this. I don't know. SSDI is not part of that, according to what you've just told me, Matt. That's about $140 billion. You have SNAP, which is food stamps. And we had a record number of people who needed SNAP in the wake of the financial crisis. That may drop down from like 40 some odd million people down, a million or two, which is based upon the growth of the country, a lower percentage of people. But that kicks in automatically. Social Security, supplemental security income, SSI, provides need-based assistance to disabled or elderly people with little income and few assets. Now, maybe giving them $1,000 a month would be better than what they get under that. But I don't know. I mean, I look, I have no problem with giving people cash. It's just not quite clear. Is this what it is here?
This is one of the big Yang Gang proponents talking about how SSDI will exist on top of the freedom dividend, SSI will not. And he has this graph here.
Okay, so in thousands. So I guess about 5 million people. They'd get rid of payments to 5 million people who are on, or 2.5 million people on, I don't know.
So if you got, like, say, 700 in SSI, I mean.
Here's the thing. What I think is so problematic about this is that so much of the value of this program is contingent upon the being able to do this with precision. And my complaint with the UBI is exactly what it was 2 or 3 years ago, which is there is a political process. And to ignore a political process, like I can tell you right now, Bernie's plan to forgive all debt. It goes through the meat grinder of, the chances of him being able to go in there without Democrats in control of both houses is, him getting that passed is obviously very low. It creates a political movement, and maybe you get there. But let's just assume that they were able to get something passed. And that bill gets into the Senate and the House, and it gets completely mangled. If the worst case scenario is like only half of the people get half of their debt, that's still good. Like, you have a lot of latitude when the policy is, we think there should be less college debt. You have a lot of latitude as to where it lands, where you're not going to come out with something that is worse, right? Like, there's no way Bernie's proposal or Warren's proposal or even Julian Castro's proposal is going to come out being more problematic. My fear with UBI is that 5 years down the road, you've now, according to Yang, found a politically palatable way of getting rid of these things. People have opted out of them by their own choice, their own free will. They have opted out of them. And then 5-10 years down the road, it's all a payment system, and then they start working on cutting that.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that, just a couple other things to note that are very concerning to me is that, one, I'm not trying to question his motives, honestly. I know that this will be the way it's interpreted, but there's different tunes depending on who he's talking to. There's definitely sometimes where it sounds like he's pushing a plan that is what we're talking about, which is on top of, in addition to. When he's talking to Rubin right there, he sounds like Charles Murray to me. He's buying into, and yeah. But I think the other thing is, like, again, let's just be blunt. This guy is not going to be elected president. And if he wants to run a campaign that is about, robotics, replacing workers, which I think is questionable too, there needs to be some interrogation of some of those assumptions, and that a UBI is the answer, then you don't need to get into all of the various machinations of how you're going to undermine other programs. You can really just run an issue campaign, because that's the purpose. So when you have that, when you're just running a media issue campaign and you're insisting on putting other things on the table to pay for something that isn't going to happen, that to me is also very questionable.
Well, what Sam just described reminds me in a gross and creepy way of the concept of the non-reformist reform, right? Which is something often used by the socialist left to mean a reform that somehow picks up its own speed and moves us closer to a socialist horizon, right? The horizon that he wants to move us closer to seems to be some kind of dystopian techno-libertarian horizon. So the UBI, like you said, would be used to sort of abolish the welfare state in more of a gradual way, which is why I'm referring to it as non-reformist welfare reform, because welfare reform was a horribly cruel program of austerity implemented by Bill Clinton in the 90s, and it seems like that's the horizon he's looking towards.
Yeah, I'm just going by what he said.
That's what he said.
I'm not even making any assessment on why he said it or what he's doing or if he has some other agenda. I have no idea. I'm just going by what he said, and I don't like the sound of it. I don't like the sound of you could also, that's what they were going to try and do, frankly, with Social Security. They were going to try and privatize it, give people the option of putting their Social Security money in the private stock market. Again, leaving it up to the individuals. And it would be a disaster from a policy standpoint. I also, frankly, don't think we should do that with vaccinations either. There's a whole host of things that I don't think that we should allow people to choose in terms of what the government does. Because the individual's best interest is not necessarily the best interest of society. That's just the reality.
It also seems like a way around the labor issues that come with increasing automation. like Michael was saying that, he's skeptical of the idea of automation. I think it's a really great idea, but if we don't accompany that with real political changes and changes in the social relations of how we make things and how we reproduce our society, it's not going to be good.
Well, I always say, worry about capitalism, not robots. But
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
like AOC said, the problem that people it should be a good thing that robots are replacing workers because it means we have more leisure time. But if we still have the same system where we all need to have jobs in order to survive and work 40 hours a week, then it becomes sinister.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a theory. That's why a theory with all technology that's introduced on some level, right? Like, this is going to make me so much more efficient. It's also going to make me on call 24 hours a day. And as everyone else gets just more efficient, I'm going to be expected to have X amount of percentage more efficiency and more productivity. And that's basically the way it works. All right, look, should we do this now or should we go into the fun half with this?
Let's just do it.
Well, we have a little bit of conflict.
We have a conflict. I'm willing to stand down. I'm not invested in this.
All right,
wait till
this
the
is
fun
for
half?
members. We're going to do this. We're going to play the Blockbuster Project Veritas video, and
I wonder why we're playing this, frankly.
And then, because it's important, and because we're pursuing the truth. We'll of course cut out certain names that we don't like appearing in it, but we will do this in the fun half. Folks, just a reminder: you can support this program by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. It is your membership that makes this show possible. And when you join, you get access to the fun half. You, I guess that's more or less about it. I mean, you get bragging rights. I don't know who you're going to find where that carries any huge weight. But you could do it and just enjoy how people are looking at you like, what are you talking about? But and that's really all that's important. So go in, become a member, join themajorityreport.com, go into work the next day, brag about it to everybody. They're all going to look at you like you're weird, but you know that you're not. It's they're the weird ones.
Hey, it might get you laid at the Netroots Nation conference.
I mean, I can tell you from experience that it probably won't, but it could. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Today is Tuesday. Oh,
how you doing?
Good. What are you doing?
Well,
look
tonight.
At you. What are you going to do now that it's summer? You can't wear your Adidas tracksuits.
Well, I wear my free Lula shirt on the day of Lula's hearing at the Brazilian Supreme Court.
Or as you would say, why is it at the American Supreme Court?
I asked you. What
I said this. I thought Supreme Court was kind of self-explanatory that it would be the country's Supreme Court.
I would imagine.
Fine. Yep.
No, you said, why is he at the American Supreme Court?
I said the U.S. Supreme Court?
The U.S. Supreme Court?
And you said yes.
I said yes because I thought it was an intentionally stupid question, and I was joking with you.
I was talking about the U.S. Supreme Court.
The U.S. Supreme Court. Lula's coming.
Tonight.
Sounds like it's going to be a great show.
Harvey K is here in studio. We're talking about the Wisconsin uprising, Bernie's speech. Brian Mayer from Brazil Wire and Telesur is joining us as well to talk about those Supreme Court hearings and how the Guardian, the New York Times, and Jimmy Dore, the U.S. Supreme Court's hearings on Lula, exactly, Sam, and how the Guardian, the New York Times, and Jimmy Dore failed the Lava Jato coverage and what that has to teach us about how to cover, quote unquote, corruption moving forward, particularly in places the U.S. is invested in Latin America. This Sunday for patrons, Bill Fletcher Jr. on the Democratic Party and the Gramscian war of positions and how the progressive movement relates to it. Also get your tickets to our Chicago Live Show. Patreon.com/TMBS. See you tonight at 7.
Jamie.
This week on the Antifada. So I feel like it's been a million years since I've been in the office, the studio, but I'm going to do my best at this plug here. So last week we spoke with our friend Sophie Weiner, night editor of Splinter News, about her very cool socialist techno-zine that she started called Pluralitariat, about nightlife, socialism, and how to use nightlife as a radical space to spread socialism. Friday, we released a bonus for our patrons that, if I do say so myself, was pretty funny. We read the infamous Crime Think essay, Washing ... or brainwashing, about how cleanliness is a capitalist conspiracy
Wrong,
to make
fake
you feel
news.
bad about yourself and sell you things.
Fake news.
And coming up this week, we have Chad Vigorous, aka Pretty Bad Lefty, for a wide-ranging conversation on race, identity, politics, and even a little bit of electoral stuff. So check it out.
Matt.
Yeah, literary hangover. Just under 3 hours on Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Blithedale Romance, on the Utopian Socialists, and why both Nathaniel Hawthorne and the guy who founded the New York Times were against them.
Darn it, I guess I have my wow on the other one, don't I? I get that. I was going to do the wow after the 3 hours. All right, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Danergy's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danergy.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are...
Psych. Fuck em.
Almost says what? Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a new blockbuster video from Project Veritas. You have seen Dave Rubin incessantly claim that he is being shadow banned on Twitter and on YouTube. And in fact, I think it's hard to imagine what Dave Rubin's Twitter feed would even look like if he wasn't complaining about how much YouTube was demonetizing him and how little he needed YouTube and how much he needed YouTube and on and on. And now we finally have proof. Dave Rubin has retweeted out definitive proof. How do we know this is definitive? Well, of course, there is a person who is in silhouette who tells us it's true. So it must be true. The idea, well, let's just play this video. Here we go.
It was a special occasion that happened in May, and they invited us all to the Masonic Temple to talk about the future of the company for YouTube, and they described that they were going to
pause it for 1 second.
I think this is important.
It's important to note that whenever Google does anything like this, they will have their employees go to a Masonic temple. Of course, because the Masons have been engaged in this type of subterfuge for, since
the original No Platformers.
Right? Weren't they? How long has the Masonic temples been around, right? I mean, isn't that like where they breed vampires too?
It really started in the Enlightenment.
No comment.
Okay, continue.
And they invited us all to the Masonic Temple to talk about the future of the company for YouTube, and they described that they were going to have more content filtering. And right after that happened, a lot of the content creators started to get demonetized, and their videos started to get deranked. I'm talking about Dave Rubin, talking about Carpe Diem, talking about Tim Pool, and a lot of the other content creators that are within the YouTube ecosystem just saw their view counts just go through the floor.
Wait, so just to clarify, he's basing this off of a trip to the Masonic Lodge, not like internal emails or something that said we're going to demonetize.
Of course, because they would never, this is the point, they would never, ever have this meeting at Google, because then they could actually be held to account if they have it at the Masonic Temple. Now, here's the other thing that's interesting, and partially why I think that this guy got played. We can see the view counts. You can go to Social Blade and see the view counts. What they would have done would have been demonetized and had a lower rate of monetization. But the view counts are obvious. They have not dropped through the floor, but continue.
So how is it that Google is able to target these people?
The way that Google is able to target people is that they take videos and then they do a transliteration through using artificial intelligence.
Specifically, the insider verified that PragerU, the conservative educational YouTube channel, and talk show host Dave Rubin's videos received heightened analysis in the artificial intelligence program Viacom. Viacom polices YouTube distribution, singling Prager and Rubin out as right-wing and news talk.
And they look at the translated text of what those people are saying, and then they assign certain categories to them, like right-winger or news talk, and then they're able to take those and apply their algorithmic rebiasing unfairness algorithms to them so that their content is suppressed across the platform. And so
Pause it for a second.
Does everybody have the unfairness algorithm ready? We're meeting at the Masonic Lodge. We're going to be drinking wine from skull goblets. And I want everybody to have the unfairness algorithms ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the unfairness algorithm.
Don't make
which I
fun
have been creating for decades.
Yeah. Don't make.
You will find it's extremely unfair.
It's easy to dismiss the URUAs, the algorithmic rebiasing unfairness algorithms.
Algorithmic rebiasing unfairness algorithms.
They thought that they've merely uploaded an exchange of ideas.
How is this a real thing?
Oh my God!
If you're listening,
yes, listen to the guy who convinced Project Veritas. And what's the guy? Who's Project Veritas?
James O'Keefe.
James O'Keefe. To you, who I imagine it's one of the perfect liars or something, a yes man or something like this. Like, look, contact us. I will keep your name secret. I will keep it secret that we've even contacted us. And I will double whatever Andrew Yang ends up paying out to.
We just want to hear your story.
Yes, man. We just want to hear even if it's just amongst us.
Yeah,
Like,
seriously.
They assign certain categories to them, like right-winger or news talk, and then they're able to take those and apply their algorithmic rebiasing unfairness algorithms to them so that their content is suppressed across the platform. And so they're coming in and they're putting their thumb down, and they're deciding which content the users are allowed to see.
What's scary about this to you?
What's scary is that Google's deciding what's important and what's not important. They are going through and they're effectively deleting conversations from the national narrative. It reminds me of a book called 1984.
Oh my God.
Oh, this is so played.
And I know our estimation of Dave Rubin's cognitive skills is low, but how could you buy this?
Wait. Don't we have the tweet? No. Before, I think don't we have Dave's tweet? I just IM'd it to you guys. I think that's an important part of the story here.
Let's see this important
because we're talking about over or underestimating somebody's cognitive ability. I just want to get everything down on the record, even if it risks.
Oh,
us,
the wanna chat? Is that it? Yeah, we had that up.
Okay.
We had that up. All right. So the, ladies and gentlemen,
it's a book called 1984. I never heard of it before.
Listen to me.
Wait, what is that? Wait, what's that book? They're going to eliminate it from the algorithm.
Okay, look,
More and more
we've had our
people have
laugh.
been reading it.
We've had our laugh, and for when we first saw this, we thought, okay, this is obviously some type of hoax or whatnot. But ladies and gentlemen, we here have received even more footage, and I think we owe it, because we are truth tellers, to show you this footage that we have discovered. There's more to this, and it's not just Google doing this. It would be one thing if Google was functioning as some type of editor on their platform and deciding what was important and what wasn't. But it's far more nefarious. Play the video.
So who gives you your marching orders on who to suppress?
So basically what we do in suppressing Dave Rubin and all the other right-wing shows, every morning we get a list of who we're supposed to suppress, from Hillary Clinton and the Majority Report and Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder. The Michael Brooks Show. Fine, the Michael Brooks Show too. And, Ring of Fire Radio, available on Stitcher and iTunes. Hangover. Fine, Literary Hangover as well. They send us and the Intifada. They send us lists of who we suppress because they're on the left and we do whatever they tell us. We do whatever they tell us to do. So that's the way we do it, basically. And we do it for money and just for algorithms and ideology. And also, 1984, Big Brother stuff. That's why we do it. So, because we're doing bad things to Dave Rubin. So, yep.
Why? Why did we play that? We're busted.
I know.
Jesus Christ.
Stupid
We
of
just
us.
told on ourselves. Why, Sam, your self-sabotage instincts are profound.
I know. A lot of people would have said, hey, why are we going to blow the lid on ourselves? But I'm sorry. It's the truth. And somebody in this office, obviously, or someone at Google obviously squealed on us, and
we know how humiliating it is when you censor the truth out of your show.
Hey, that's the thing.
You got to get out in front of it.
We could have cut out the names Majority Report. We could have cut out the names Michael Brooks Show.
And a fade to white quick.
The Intifada, Literary Hangover, but we wouldn't do that because that would be embarrassing for us. So it's the truth. The truth is out there, and we just played it. So I don't, we had to do that. And, I'm proud that we did. I accidentally took a call, so let's just go with it. You're calling from a 270 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Who's this?
My name is Christian. I live in Tennessee, and I just one question with you, and that was I don't know if you've heard, but this year's Politicon will be happening in Nashville, Tennessee, which I'm excited for because I actually live in Murfreesboro, and it's a lot closer for me to attend, so I'll be attending. And I was curious if you've gotten an email from the people at Politicon if you'll be joining this year.
I don't think I have. I didn't know that about Tennessee, and I didn't know, and I feel like that we had heard from them by this time last year, hadn't we? Is it in September?
I think it's in October, actually.
Oh, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Well, but it wasn't in October last time too. Yeah. I don't. I just don't know. Maybe I'm not invited this year.
Oh man, I hope so because, like I said, it's happening right near where I am, and I honestly wouldn't be able to make it to Los Angeles because it's a little too expensive for me. I'm actually a college student. I just recently graduated from Middle Tennessee State University with a degree in English, and I kind of understand how all this, since on the news recently, there's all this stuff about a proposal for ending tuition for public colleges and all that, and I'm just going to be a real wreck once I start having to pay the loans off.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, if I get invited to go, I will probably go. Although I was sort of, I thought it was in L.A., which was part of my incentive. But Tennessee sounds like it'll be pretty cool too, I guess.
It is really nice, actually. Yeah, because
I hear good things.
I really loved how you took down Charlie Kirk last year, and it would just be amazing if you could actually get on stage with Crowder. But we all know how he is essentially.
Yeah, it's true.
We know how that goes.
We do. All right. Well, I appreciate the call. I will let you know if I end up going. If I end up getting invited, I have no idea.
I feel like we should all go and do a cage match with like Charlie Kirk and friends.
I hear Tennessee is beautiful too.
Yeah.
I like Nashville a lot. They've got a great music scene there.
All right. Appreciate the call.
It really is. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. I didn't know that. Oh, that may change my. Well, we'll see. I haven't heard. It's quite possible that I was not invited back, because who knows? Maybe I talked too much.
Because you owned too hard.
Possibly.
Everyone's afraid of you.
Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. It's John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. Let me guess. Let me guess what you're calling about, John. Can I? Will you give me $1,000 a month if I can guess?
No.
All right. Well, I'm going to guess anyways. Are you calling about the Emerson poll, John?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of my call. Yeah, so Bernie had a triumphant rollout of his debt cancellation plan yesterday. Warren's a debt cancellation plan to help propel her to double-digit polling, more than any other plan that she introduced. It'll affect more people, since it will affect more people. Now Bernie has topped Warren's plan by bringing universality to his plan, which will cancel $1.6 trillion in student debt. I'd love to see some of the congressional co-sponsors of Bernie's plans, AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Premier Jayapal endorse Bernie soon. So this morning's Emerson National poll put Bernie at 27%, which is the highest vote total since Biden entered the race. Biden sits at 34%. The combined total of Bernie and Biden is the highest total since mid-March. And when you add Warren's 14%, you get 75%, which is the highest total of the campaign. So if you add just Bernie and Warren together, it's 41% are supporting the top two progressives, which is also the highest percentage of the campaign. And you could help, and it could help one of them win at the convention on the second or later ballots, considering there probably will be a brokered convention for the first time since 1952. So Biden is getting most of his support from people who think that he has the best chance of beating Trump. Bernie's numbers are very similar to Biden's in that metric, but Bernie's been mentioning how well he's doing against Trump in various interviews, and even offering a sticker that says Bernie beats Trump if you donate to his campaign. I've talked about how irrelevant this is many times on this show because hypotheticals this far out have little predictive quality. I don't think Bernie should talk about this, considering Biden's numbers are slightly better against Trump, and you need to move people away from talking about this metric.
Well,
in the debate.
Now, hold on for 1 second, John. Let me just address that, because I was with you on this several months ago, but it definitively seems like the horse is out of the barn, as it were, right? And so I think you do engage in this, because one of two things are going to happen from this point, literally from this point forward. It may happen in the debate, may happen in future debates, may happen in Iowa. But there's going to be something that's going to make Biden look weaker than he is now, right? It's like there's no way to make Biden look stronger against Trump. He is at the peak assessment of his abilities against Trump, right? There's no, short of him walking up to Donald Trump and shoving him, right? Or smacking him around. There's just no scenario that I can come up with. Maybe there is one, but I can't contemplate one. But there are many opportunities for Biden to look weaker, right? Because now he's about to get exposed more. He's going to be on stage. There's going to be more interest, increasingly more interest in the campaign. If he goes to Iowa and he loses, then he starts to look like he's losing. So Biden has everything to lose in terms of an assessment as to whether he can beat Trump. Everyone else in the race, including Bernie, have to gain in that column. And so I think that I understand why they're engaging in this. 3 or 4 months ago, I would have said no, because I didn't anticipate that people thought Biden was going to beat Trump. But I guess that was just a vestige of people associating him with Obama. I think we're going to just see progressively more and more people questioning, can Biden really handle this? Because if Biden can't handle this guy or that woman or this, whatever it is, people are going to start to question whether he can handle Trump. And so, I guess it's also conceivable that Biden is going to do great in the debates. He's going to come out there. He's going to seem completely with it. He's not going to fumble anything. People are going to appreciate his policies. He's going to have an answer for everything. He's not going to come off as, condescending or whatever it is, or defensive. But I find that hard to believe. And so I think we're going to start to see, once that is a weak spot for him, because it is where all of his support lies. So I understand why, if I was Bernie, or really if I was Warren too, and if I was anybody else but Biden, I would be talking about this now. Because what Biden has to shift to is you want me to win. Not just I can, but you want me to. And that's a much harder transition for him to make.
I'm just going to put in the plug, as always, that the synthesis of this point for Bernie is trade, and she should hit Biden so hard on that, both on the merits and also how are you going to middle-class Joe it through the industrial belt that Trump won when you supported these bills that he knows how to attack.
Dead ass.
But go ahead, John. Continue, please. Sorry.
No, those are excellent points. I mean, so in the debate itself, I mean, I think that the number one thing is Bernie needs to promote his agenda, first of all, because there's a lot of people, who are going to be tuning in for the first time. And so, I mean, that should be his main thing. And then essentially, like Michael said, attack Biden on various issues, and then third, maybe talk about Trump a little bit. I mean, you only have 60 seconds to answer a question with 10 people in the debate, 30 seconds as for a rebuttal if somebody addresses you. So, I mean,
I will tell you, Bernie will say, this is my guess, at least once, Joe and I both poll well against Trump. He will say that. He'll say it at least once. Because that's the way you present this, right? You make the argument like, okay, we're in the same class together. He wants to exclude other people from that class, of course, and say that we are the two that can beat. And then he puts it on that playing ground that you're talking about, which is, which one of us do you want? Which one of us has policies that you're gonna like more? And that's what he's gonna do. And Joe Biden, I don't know what he's gonna do. He's just going to be.
What do you think?
Go ahead.
What do you think about Warren has been running these videos, just in the last couple of days, saying why they switched to Warren. I mean, I think that Bernie should run something like a comeback to Bernie campaign, saying how he won 22 states, 12 million votes, and then talking about how the issues when he first brought these up were considered extreme. Now they're mainstream. Do you think that could be an effective means of promotion?
I mean, I don't know if I would remind people that they've left and come back to Bernie, but I think there is something to the idea that what Bernie has done for the Democratic Party, as evidenced by all these people coming out with proposals that are, at the very least, in the spirit of proposals that he introduced to the Democratic national stage, at least in this era, right? I mean, there's obviously a history of these in the Democratic Party, but in modern times, there was nobody carrying the banner for Medicare for all who was at, the leadership of the party. There was, things like student debt, all of these things. He introduced them and sort of legitimized them as positions that everyone needs to follow. And I think the argument from Bernie is you can adopt a plan, whether it's like mine or anybody else's. But the question is, how do you get other people to adopt that plan? And I've done that. The fact that everybody on this stage, in one way or another, is echoing the plans that I have is not an indication just that the plans are good, although they are. It's an indication of what needs to happen on a national level. You need to not just present a plan, you need to get people to adopt a plan. And that's what I can do. This is the way I would do it as Bernie, is that I understand we need a movement that is bigger than me. That we need to go out into communities and get people to buy into our program and then push for it. And everybody on this stage who's going to echo the plans that I've been talking about, they're not just validating the plans themselves. They're validating my ability to help all of us move in that direction. That's what I would sell if I was Bernie, because Warren has successfully, I think, branded herself as having plans. She's done a good job of branding herself that way. And I think the way that she was able to do that is because she's known for doing this stuff and for having a lot of skills, bureaucratically and whatnot.
He said this in South Carolina just 2 days ago. I mean, he said, just to your point, he's already testing this. He said, there's a lot of good people They're proposing to do good things, and they intend to do good things. But I'm the one that basically has a movement behind me and the mechanics of actually being able to put the pressure on the system to achieve those things.
His sales job has to be, not only do I have plans, that's just a function of getting good people around you, but I have a plan to implement the plans. And that's what Bernie, I think, I would expect that he's going to try and sell. So he's going to basically pocket the idea that he and Biden can beat Trump, mention it, dismiss it, move on to like, and not only do I have the ability to beat Trump, because of what I've learned from however he articulates this in a way, and hopefully it's as, sort of like as much about the movement as himself, which I think he's pretty good at. He will articulate that's what I bring to the table, an understanding that I can have the best plan in the world, but if I don't have a movement behind me, I won't be able to implement it. And I expect that's what he's going to say. And then I think Joe Biden's going to go, oh, excuse me. Oh, bless me, Father.
A plan? What about you sit down and you say, rebate on a private jet tax, and we phase out Social Security.
Right.
And then we have a drink together.
That's right.
Although I don't drink.
Here's my plan. It's to call everybody son.
Here's my plan. Remember Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan? Well, if you don't, I have no empathy for your college debts. All right. Thanks, everybody.
You there, Sam?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
All right.
Bye. All right. Take care.
Bye. Take it easy. That's how it would be if John and I are hanging out.
Yep.
Are you still there, John? Yeah, I'm still here. All right. Well, see you tomorrow. And then we just walk away.
Take care.
We would just that's the way we would have.
It's very sweet.
We would go get coffee together and just sit and not even be aware of each other's presence. Just be talking.
I don't think that that's specific to your interaction with John.
No, that's basically the way I run all of it. Sure. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Code.
Hi, Sam. It's Josh, and I'm on my way to Boston to see my White Sox beat your Red Sox on Wednesday.
Click.
Yeah, dream on, dude.
Dude.
No,
you should go out to the bleachers and wear your White Sox cap. That'll be fun.
I'm sitting in the bleachers.
Good.
Anyways, first of all, anyone in New York, Queens specifically, please get out the vote for Tiffany Caban. If you're not in Queens and you're in Brooklyn or you're in any other borough, please help get out the vote by volunteering or canvassing. I did an early shift this morning and I've been text banking on my phone. So everyone needs to do this because it's a landmark election potentially. But I actually want to pick up on something that John talked about when he talked about how he wanted Ilhan Omar and Rashida and Pramila Jayapal and AOC to endorse Bernie already, and I think they kind of have when they signed on to his bill, because I think this is in a way drawing the lines. I mean, the student debt bill is Warren's signature bill, and they've signed on to Bernie's proposal, and I think in a way this is, I mean, not that someone like Jayapal is necessarily a self-identified socialist, but I think this is them drawing the lines in the sand between like a more liberalism or a more liberal approach or a reformist approach or a liberal approach like Warren's, and I think signing on to something that's more progressive like Bernie. And so I think
that's pretty astute, Josh.
What indicates this?
I think that's pretty astute. I mean, it leads me to believe that we're not going to see an endorsement from those folks, that what they're going to do is associate themselves in this manner. And I mean, I frankly, like, I don't see it as crucial that they endorse. And I am more concerned about like their, maintaining their power, frankly, going forward, rather than than some desire to endorse, because I just don't know. I think there's value in it, and when they come out and they they co-sign onto legislation because
I think it's more valuable.
I think it's much more valuable in terms of like our politics. I just don't like how many votes is it going to make a difference to Bernie to have those people endorse one or the other?
I think an official endorsement, I mean, just because of the amount of sort of propaganda and lies about his campaign would be helpful. But I think, I haven't been convinced one way or another. I mean, I do think that it will be endorse Bernie or probably stay neutral is my sense. I don't think that they would endorse Warren over Bernie.
I don't think so.
But actually, and I thought that was where it was heading. But I actually think this is a good catch, though, that Josh is making about the debt plan, because it's kind of one thing to move in between and say, I'm going to partner with Bernie on something good. I'm going to partner with Warren on something good. I think it is an interesting kind of shot across the bow that he comes out with something that's so much more kind of transformative and aggressive, and they sign on to it like that and give him all of that shine. I mean, because even like things like Jayapal going back to 2015 and thanking him for talking about this when nobody else is talking about this, that's a more sort of campaign style thing. That isn't, this is good policy, let's do it.
But I would prefer them do it this way than come out and say like some type of endorsement that just ends up, creating acrimony and doesn't really give you any material benefit. I think this type of stuff signals to the people, in a sort of very sort of, I think.
I think endorsements are helpful for like local races, like Caban. When AOC endorses Caban, that's a huge deal because it gets out votes.
It's a machine.
And I think AOC will endorse Bernie, but she's also signed on to his credit card bill. Or did they co-create that together?
Yes,
it's not signing on. They're indifferent, but she's done the House version. And for me, that's also, again, Warren is known for getting into politics through the credit card stuff with Biden. For me, I think that's another indication, at least.
Well, I think like if you think about what Bernie's argument's going to be, and I'm quite convinced that it's going to be, I can get people, I can move people, like literally not just come out with a plan. I can get the plan implemented. And that's what he's doing, right? Like he's getting people to sign on to his program. And on some level, he's already done it with the other candidates. So, and I think like things that push that narrative, that enhance that narrative are far more valuable, it seems to me, than an endorsement. Now, AOC is sort of like in a different league, I think, in many respects, because she's a national figure. But I think this is, I would be surprised to see any type of endorsement out of folks like that until like, February, March at the earliest. But who knows?
Also, can I get some recs for Boston?
Yeah. Root for the Red Sox. How's that for a recommendation?
Right.
All right.
Ooh.
To be honest with you, like
Actually,
I would tell
seriously,
you, go to the Rathskeller, which closed probably 20 years ago. I don't know. Is the Rat still there? Kenmore Square?
I haven't been to Boston in like 10 years.
Get one of them Fenway Franks. Those are good.
And then literally don't root for the White Sox too aggressively. No joke.
Good luck, Josh. Nice knowing you.
Nice.
We don't want your canvassing fingers all knotted up, dude.
All right, let's get into some of this here. We mentioned Donald Trump saying that he does not need congressional authorization to strike Iran. And now John Bolton is in some semi-retreat. The Iranians have played this pretty smart. Some time ago, there was reporting that part of their agenda was to basically peel John Bolton off of Donald Trump. And certainly Bolton and Pompeo's failure in Venezuela has helped in that project. There was reporting, I guess, last week that Trump was a little bit pissed about that, too. I thought it was going to be easy. What? Now I look like an idiot. Again, I don't know if Donald Trump has any ideological grounding in any of these things. I think he wanted to get rid of the Iran deal because Obama had done it and it had been perceived as a signature achievement of Obama's. And in many respects certainly was from a foreign policy standpoint. I think it was, arguably his Camp David Accords. And so now John Bolton is in some measure in retreat. And here he is arguing like, look, I start this thing with virgin eyes. It's not like I came in with an agenda.
Can you tell us what is your end game regarding Iran? Is it a regime change, perhaps a new nuclear deal?
No, it's not regime change. It's not the policy of the United States. So go ahead. What's your next alternative?
Pause it. Incidentally, what you just witnessed was a guy answering a question that was not asked. They were asking what his agenda is, and he answered what the policy of the United States is. Ask me if I'm a fascist, and I will answer, I am not a communist.
Next alternative.
Because you stressed in the past that you think that the United States should push for a regime change. And
okay,
now
stop there. Let me just address that because it's been 6 months since I've been in Israel, so I have to do it periodically. When I was a private citizen, I said and wrote many, many things. They're all out there. I still believe in them, but that's not my function here today. Not to be a commentator on what I said before versus what the policies of the U.S. government are. The president sets the policies. I'm the national security advisor, not the national security decision maker. Go ahead. Look, if Iran gave up its pursuit of nuclear weapons, its ballistic missile development program, which is designed to create delivery vehicles for nuclear weapons, if it gave up its support for terrorism, if it stopped its other malign activities across the region, we'd be very happy. Secretary Pompeo last year gave a speech where he listed 12 things. I've given you 4. It's sort of an expanded list. That's the end game we want.
Now, of course, when Donald Trump entered in office, like 2 of those things had basically been ticked off. And dealing with support for terrorism and hostile regimes, even if I stipulate that they do this, that all the regimes that we perceive as hostile are legitimately hostile, we were halfway there. In fact, some people would argue halting the nuclear capability is more than halfway there. That's like 2/3 of the way there. But that was punted. So there's John Bolton really basically trying to explain to President Trump, you can trust me, believe me. No one would be more upset than I if they just didn't capitulate and avoid a war.
I want to just say, it's not just that as a quote-unquote private citizen that he was this relentless warmonger about Iran and also regime change advocate across Latin America and even a warmonger with North Korea. He took money from the MEK, which is a cult. I mean, it was taken off of the terrorism list because of that type of sort of political activity they have with people as diverse as Bolton and Howard Dean.
Yep. But that was just aligned interest, and there were being money there.
Right. Very popular group in Iran. I mean, the group that fought on the side of Saddam Hussein while he was deploying chemical weapons against Iran is a great group to rely on to ease a regime change.
So we reported earlier that that the acting border protection chief is resigning in response to people's response of how we are treating children and warehousing them. Here is Brian Kilmeade, Fox and Friends, albeit prior to this resignation, defending the failure of the U.S. government to treat these children humanely, to do things like get them beds or to provide them medical care or food or lice combs. Here he is.
It's just amazing that these news outlets seem to be on the same page of the Democratic talking points. What they say on Sunday all of a sudden is parroted and featured on Monday and Tuesday. And it is, look at how bad these conditions are for kids at the border. Keep in mind, they don't build, the Border Patrol wasn't in charge of building a Marriott or a Hyatt. They're in charge of detaining people that come across and do the best they can. But they're trained in law enforcement. So what do you want their accommodations to be? It's not George Bush's fault or Bill Clinton's fault or Barack Obama's fault. The accommodations haven't changed. The number of people coming through have.
Yeah. Well, the number of unaccompanied minors has increased because they've changed the definition of what unaccompanied means. And they have kept reunification of these children. They have deprioritized it. They are not getting these kids to family members they have in the country. We know this. This is their stated policy. Their stated policy is to immiserate these people as a way of basically firing warning shots. That's what their stated policy is. That's what they're trying to achieve. So this isn't a failure. It is mission accomplished. To the extent that there's a failure, it's that they haven't been able to keep it from the public in the way that they had hoped. That they have a problem. How do we make these people suffer so that they actually make the decision to stay in some of the most violent situations in the world, the most dangerous situations in the world for their kids, the most desperate situations in the world? How can we make these people suffer enough and get that message back to people in those situations that the suffering here is going to be equivalent to the suffering that you'll go through there. So you might as well just stay there without the American public finding out that we're doing this. That's their dilemma. And of course, there's no way to do that. Not over time. And I think we're also finding that you can make these kids suffer, but they're not going to be dead. Or some of them are, I guess, but they're not going to be subject to the same measure of violence. But I think there are at least a decent number of Americans who sort of feel like that shouldn't be the bar for us. That we can't maintain our sense of our exceptionalism if we're literally treating kids in this way. We're not that inhumane. Now, there are some who are. We played video the other day of Trump supporters saying, like, I don't want to be made to feel bad for these kids. It's the parents' fault.
They're using bad guys. The bad guys are using kids.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically it, right? It's like it's all about the children unless you decide that you don't want it to be. So there's Kilmeade. It's just the fault of these kids. As if like getting beds is that difficult. Or as if saying, you know what, we're going to go back, that the best case scenario that we can do is just to make sure that family members in this country aren't afraid to come pick up these kids, or that we allow and enhance their ability to connect with these people. They could do that, but the problem is that's not their sales pitch to get reelected. That's what's going on here. You know, we talk about externalities in the context of chasing profit. This is an externality that is in the context of chasing votes. Kids are going to suffer, and that'll earn us some more votes. That's the plan. So, pretty effing disgusting. Here's Lou Dobbs going to further provide, everybody, all the people in the right-wing ecosphere, they all have sort of their bailiwick, right, that they use to justify the way that we're treating these children and treating immigrants. And, with Trump, it's the murder and the mayhem and M13. Whatever happened to those guys?
Took care of them. M13, done.
M13 and the rapist and the murder. And then with someone like Lou Dobbs, it's because of the corruption of our political process, because you have millions of undocumented immigrants going in there and saying, heck with it. I like being in this country. It's great. But only if I get to the opportunity to dictate who will be the county comptroller. I'm going to vote in this election. I'm going to make sure
You mean
that
I can have my kids live in safety and work let's be real, probably 2 full-time jobs? Look, if I don't have a stay over town selectman, forget it. Going back to Guatemala.
Right.
I don't care if they have a contract in my life.
A cleaner election across the country, the president talking about voter fraud and the left-wing national media, absolutely mocking him for doing so. And it turns out time after time after time, as we learn more, and in part because of your organization's Judicial Watch's efforts and those of other groups, we're seeing real results here. The president, again, proved right.
Yeah, and it's tied to the border crisis. We've got tens of millions of aliens, both legally and unlawfully present. And the idea that they don't register to vote and then vote is just ludicrous. So there's a large number of aliens who are illegally voting. It's pretty clear. Numbers in Texas have borne that out. Numbers in Pennsylvania have borne that out. And, frankly, Lou, the left wants to be able to steal elections when necessary. I think from the point of view of most Americans, every stolen vote is a civil rights violation. Right. And I don't know about you, but one stolen vote is too many in my book.
Well, only when necessary.
One stolen vote might be the only one that you can come up with, and so it better be too many.
If the left is trying to steal elections, they're doing a terrible job.
Well, that's the thing, too. This just goes to show the undocumented, not only are they illegally voting, but they're also lazy.
Wouldn't it be funny if the undocumented and us in general, we are as egoic and as short-sighted and stupid as the Clinton campaign, because what we do is we just want to run up the national totals through fraud. We don't pay attention to actually winning.
We stole the popular vote.
It's a poor use of our manpower, though, because we're trying to take Senate seats in Texas. Texas is a massive state. We could take our thousands and hundreds of thousands of, south
but all this is what I said at the Masonic Temple. I was like, why are we taking all of these undocumented immigrants in Texas and having them vote in Massachusetts? It doesn't make any sense.
And then all of the illegals were like, I like Beto, man. I'm not going to go somewhere else to vote. He's got charisma. And then once again, we get lost in the celebrity culture.
Yeah, you get leftist infighting among our
the left
voters.
eats its own.
It's really...
we can't even coordinate our tens
all the
of
undocumented
thousands.
people that voted for Jill Stein in Wisconsin really screwed us
I'm
over.
voting my conscience. I'm not going to vote out of fucking fear.
I just find it amazing when you see these guys. They both dress up in suits. Lou Dobbs has been going down to that office for 100 million years. And this other dude coming down there, written a whole book based completely on a total lie that he surely must know is a lie, because there's an absence of data. And he could say, like, one is far too many as far as I'm concerned. And the reason why he says that, again, is because there may be only one. There may be literally only one case of this happening when someone thought they could vote and didn't realize they couldn't. Like, they had a green card and they thought, oh, I'm allowed to vote.
Well, wait, if we're concluding that, I mean, isn't there actually is that totally obscene story in Texas of a woman who, what did she vote in the wrong district or something?
Well, she was on parole.
She was on parole. I don't remember the specifics, but the point is she's in prison for voting.
Yes.
So
no, there's no doubt in my mind that there is one or two. And it's conceivable there has been a small town supervisor position that has gone to someone else because of that one or two vote. that has ever taken place. But I doubt it. But these guys know they're lying, and they dress up to go on television and have freaking makeup on there just to lie.
I don't want to go to Michigan and land it for Hillary. Let's run up the total in California.
Lou Dobbs is maybe the most shameless liar of those hosts.
To invoke civil rights in this is disgusting.
It's
mendacity.
Amazing. It's amazing. What should we play here? Oh, yeah. Here's Bill O'Reilly. Folks, O'Reilly's getting it. Are you? Bill O'Reilly tweeted out a piece on reparations that I think is really astute. Slavery reparations is a far-left favorite, he wrote, because it does a number of things. It reinforces the radical belief that the United States was founded by racist white men. I think this is true, who installed a system whereby white guys would run everything, right? And blacks, women, and others would be exploited.
Get those white guys. Get them. Get them.
I mean, I think the idea that black people, women, had second-class citizenship, black people really, I would say, probably close to, I don't know, even fourth or fifth. I mean, not even citizenship, right? Just they were literally machines to make money.
Capital investments.
Yes. Definitionally exploited. Women, I'm going to go make money. You stay at home and make sure that I have the ability to come home and eat and have progeny. But in terms of economic and political rights, no, I don't think so. I'm just going to, I mean, I don't know if people back in the day would say like, hey, sweetheart, do you want me to exploit you for the rest of our lives? But that's basically what
There's
it
a
was.
reason they call farming the act of mating animals husbandry.
Right, there you go. So I think O'Reilly's getting it. And he goes on to say it also suggests that personal responsibility does not count when the legacy of slavery dropped a curtain of oppression on the black race, and there is no recovering from that. I mean, I don't think that there is no recovering from that, but I think it's pretty close, at least in the context of the time scope that we've been dealing with.
But aren't they saying reparations is the way to help recover from that?
Well, I think he's saying without reparations. I think he gets it. I really do.
Yeah, he's got a systemic analysis. It's
Exactly.
not an individual thing. It's a structural thing.
Exactly. The radical left says our society remains unjust to this day. Forget personal responsibility. I mean, the only thing I would say is that people aren't saying forget personal responsibility. I think they're saying it is much, much less important in this critique and analysis. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because Bill O'Reilly has been away from Fox for so long, but he's getting it.
Doing a lot of reading.
Today in the Jacobin magazine.
There's an amazing piece on centralizing race. How it was used in the formation of early slave states. What do you think of that, Miller?
Really enjoyed the debate between Adolph Reed and Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor.
We have footage of Ilhan Omar. Yeah, this is weird. Because I've been told that Ilhan Omar's plan is to have us all engage in Sharia law. Something
we need to take seriously.
And here she is at Pride Day.
The Twin
And
Cities.
I believe it's Gay Pride.
Is she dancing?
She's dancing. Is it some type of like Sharia signal?
Sharia
telling
dance.
them through this dance that they are going to be beheaded in approximately 9 years. Yeah.
Oh, this is. I know what this is.
It's an invitation to the Saudis.
It's a targeting mechanism.
That's right.
She's there to plant targeting devices.
Yeah, everyone she shakes her butt at It's got to go.
We need to consider the possibility that each person that this woman is undulating towards Ilhan Omar is actually signaling to a Saudi death squad that they should be beheaded, and to not consider that possibility as a thought experiment would be politically correct and irresponsible. Yeah. We need to really consider the question whether Muslims are compatible with democracy. We need to be really serious about this.
Let's play this too. Beto O'Rourke came out with a proposal. I want to be fair here.
Ooh.
He's got a plan. He's got a plan too.
He is not looking happy. Whoa, look at that.
Oh boy.
All of the carefree, I'm born to do this is not here.
I mean, this is a great plan if you're getting ready to go run for Senate in Texas, and I hope
taking
that's
on the
what's
road
going
in
on.
Texas, buddy.
But here he is. I think. Listen to the plan. This is for his war tax. I am somewhat sympathetic with maybe the idea behind this.
To me, the most interesting idea in your plan was this concept of a war tax. I think that'll turn heads when people just hear that phrase. What does that mean to you?
It means that before we go to war again, after we've ended the wars that we're already in, we're going to make sure that we understand the full cost and consequence of going to those wars. It's not just deploying the women and men, the missiles and the bombs. It's their care when they come back. I'll give you an example. It took us 40 years to recognize exposure to Agent Orange as a presumptive condition for the cancers that Vietnam-era veterans were dying of. It's more than 28 years since we first heard about Gulf War syndrome, and we have yet to fully pay the cost for the research and the innovation and the care for those who served in those wars. The toxic burn pits in Afghanistan, in Iraq. I want to make sure that before we go into the next war, we've set aside a fund, a Veterans Trust Fund, that will pay for the care of those who have borne the battle in those wars. One, it ensures that we fulfill our commitments and meet our end of the obligation. And two, it might make America pause before we enter that next war, because we'll fully realize the full cost of waging those wars.
That's the idea, right? To make someone like me who doesn't have anyone in their immediate family serving actually stop and think about the cost of what our servicemen and women are doing, right?
That's right. The wars that we're fighting today, we're asking the children of tomorrow to pay for. We've racked up nearly $6 trillion in debt for the post-9/11 wars. We've asked the military service members, their families, veterans to bear that cost, and importantly, they would be exempted from any war tax. But we've allowed the rest of America to pay for these wars on our credit cards and have our kids pay it back, or crowd out other funding priorities, or even threaten the security of those who paid in to Social Security and Medicare their entire lives. It's time to pay for these wars as we fight them, and to ensure that those families who do not have U.S. service members, who are not composed of veterans, pay their fair share.
Now, there's a kernel of something in here that I appreciate, and that is the idea that, certainly during the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, it was very easy for people to walk around and not even have any clue that we were at war, that we were creating this much misery with particularly the people who lived in those countries, but also amongst our own service personnel. And the problem with this is I just don't think it works. I like the idea, like, look, yes, we should fully fund and do more for people we send to war, and having a more transparency about that cost might in some way implicate the decision to go to war. But for everything else, like, households making less than $30,000 a year would pay $25. Those making less than $40,000 would pay $57. Those making less than $50,000 would pay $98. Those making less than $75,000 would pay $164. Those making less than $100,000 would pay $270. Those making less than $200,000 would pay $485. And if you're making more than $200,000, you'd pay $1,000. These are not numbers that I think are going to make people say, like, wait a second, should we invade Iraq? It's going to cost me $98. I don't think so. Like, I think if you really, so yeah, I think that the idea that we're gonna pre-fund paying for our vets, is good if it doesn't actually in some way enable more war. I don't see why it would necessarily, but I don't think it in any way raises the consciousness of Americans and in any way inhibits the impetus to go to war. If you want to do that, then say, here's my war tax. The war tax are all these numbers, and everybody serves in the military. We're going to conscript everybody. We're going to restart the draft.
Well,
we're going to take everybody from ages 18 to 60. We're going to put in the military. You're going to serve 2 years starting now. And then I think if you really are interested in getting the American public to say, whoa, wait a second. But otherwise, I don't think it's going to have any of that other impact.
Well, even if it did somehow raise awareness, awareness of war is not the problem here because the government doesn't need the support of the population to go into war. I mean, Trump just said he doesn't even need the support of Congress. So without the political power behind it, it's like a ridiculous tail-wagging dog neoliberal tax credit solution. But you know what? That's all just fine with me because I see sad Beto up on the screen. And you know what I have to say about that?
What?
The bigger the frown, the more I'd be down. Beto, call me.
Wow. Who knew? I didn't.
It's just as surprising to me as it is to you guys.
When did this happen? Matt, will you put up my
It's been a recurring
board?
gag.
I didn't realize. I never picked up on this. I didn't realize what was going on.
Oh, it's going on.
And maybe I could come to a recording of the Antifada if your husband's out nailing something.
Oh, boy.
I mean, this is clearly not happening anyway, and I don't want to actually run for Senate. People in Texas aren't
If we
fun.
can't reclaim this DIY art space as a political platform,
if we can't reconnect me with some of your contacts from the punk scene and early Vice prototypes,
Oh, I got
could use
you.
my trust fund to forward a whole different thing that risks the imagination of a different kind of possibility.
You're going to apply that same ingenuity to helping the punk scene out. You know, we're going to listen to Fugazi. I'll show you the new spots. It'll be great.
Folks, I'm not going to get to any more calls today, I don't think, because we're going to be wrapping it up shortly. But here is, let's play this from Stephanie Cutter, because this is important to understand how this is breaking down. You're starting to see, and this is the way they roll out campaigns. Donald Trump was hitting Joe Biden because Barack Obama hasn't endorsed him yet. And that should not be a surprise to anybody because it would be very strange for him to endorse at this stage. But what we are seeing is a lot of the people from the Obama world. I think the other day it was David Axelrod. Now it's Stephanie Cutter, and which is not to say that Axelrod is still welcome in that world in many respects, but maybe he is a little bit. Stephanie Cutter, but they're all talking about poo-pooing Bernie Sanders in some way. They're all running some type of interference in the areas in which they can. I will remind you, and you know what? We should actually look to try and find out who that reporter was. Do you remember in the run-up to the 2016 primaries, some reporter, I think they contacted you, and to get to...
Yeah, I don't remember the name, but I do. Yeah.
I bet you we could find it in emails.
Yeah, we could look
maybe.
for it.
But a reporter
The
from
O'Malley
Politico...
play.
Yeah, a reporter from Politico wanted to an interview, maybe it was on background or just to get a quote or something. He was doing an extended piece on Martin O'Malley. And the way he put it to me was Martin O'Malley wants to know what he has to do to edge out Elizabeth Warren. And I was like, Elizabeth Warren, what are you talking about? She's not running for president. Bernie Sanders is. And he's like, yeah, but he's not worried about Bernie Sanders. He just like the popularity that Elizabeth Warren has. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? Bernie Sanders is going to do very well in this primary. And he's like, I mean, literally laughing. There's a level of cluelessness in some circles. They just don't get what's happening on the ground. And right now, regardless of how you slice it, there is a left lane in this primary. And according to this Emerson poll, 41% of people are supporting the two candidates in the left lane. Here is Stephanie Cutter at the Health Equity Summit, which is...
Sounds like fun.
Well, it sounds like we're actually going to provide equity for everybody, but I think, is that a name of an insurance company? Or what is...
Maybe it's more like people have equity by investing in health insurance companies.
Let's hear.
House Democrats are having a hearing on Medicare for All. Most of the candidates on the Democratic side, all 24 of them, I don't know if anybody has joined the last 24 hours, have either commented on Medicare for All or have signed on to it. But what does that really mean? That's a really good question, because nobody knows exactly what Medicare for All means. The only one with a very distinct Medicare for All plan out there is Bernie Sanders. And he wants to replace the entire healthcare system, including Medicare, and put a universal plan in place along the lines of Medicare for everybody. That's not going to happen. First of all, I don't think Bernie will be president. Don't tweet that, because there'll be a lot of hate on my Twitter.
Pause it. One of the sad things about Stephanie Cutter is that she's not aware that video exists. And so Health Equity, incidentally, is literally a company that helps provide services to administer health savings accounts, which are not going to be terribly useful in an era when you're going to have single payer. So, I mean, the idea that they're going to poo-poo this is, I think, healthy. Like, that's exactly what I want those people at that Health Equity conference to do.
Absolutely, and I think
we don't have to worry about it. It's not worth spending a dime on fighting that.
It's not worth spending a time on, and Bernie's the only one who's going to do it. I'll take that message as well.
If the opponents of Medicare for All were smart, they would launder their message a little bit more before it got to the public.
Yeah. I also think the other thing, too, I mean, I just want to, say, I think that obviously people across the board can be really ridiculous on social media, and I think the Bernie campaign is definitely trying, even if at times I think there is an extreme double standard to have people, behave in a way that helps the campaign. But, a little sympathy to people's anger there. I think that is where the legitimate part of people's serious frustration comes out, is a highly compensated consultant basically laughing off their ability to have health insurance. Is pretty disgusting.
Yeah. Well, that's a big problem with the Obama people, broadly speaking, is that there was a lot of there was a little bit of lip service, but now it's cashing in. Let's just play one more clip. I haven't heard from Ben Stein in a long time. The last time I heard from Ben Stein was that he was getting rolled by women who wanted funding from him, right?
He was a pay pig, right?
Something like that.
That was the whole point of Win Ben Stein's money. He got off on giving people his money.
Oh. That's weird.
Little did we know we were witnessing something very kinky on that show.
Gross, stop.
Here is Trish Regan. She is...
she's strange.
She is strange. She's like, it's almost like she says, like, hey, I want you to put my what do they call that that goes up thing you read?
The
prompter?
Yeah.
Prompter.
I want you to put half my stuff on a prompter over there. Half my stuff on a prompter over there. Half my stuff on a prompter over there. Because I want to make it look like I'm just trying to think about things as I say.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm starting to think she's just like a fembot being operated by Steve Bannon.
Let's see. Here we go.
Let me ask you this, though, Ben. In this environment, where you're now looking at the lowest unemployment rate for black Americans in the history of the United States of America under none other than President Trump. Is any of that loyalty starting to shift? I mean, are traditional black Democrats saying, hey, maybe the Democratic Party has failed me. Maybe I need to rethink this?
I wish I could say that that was true, but I don't think it is true. I don't know why it isn't true, but there is a very deep attachment to black people feeling like they're the underdogs and the feeling that they've been victimized. And for a very long time, they were the underdogs and they were being victimized. So you can see why they feel that way. But why they would attach themselves to a person who means nothing but trouble for everyone he touches, for everyone who comes around him, like Minister Farrakhan, is a mystery to me. I mean, this guy is a very, very bad guy. This guy is Hitler. This guy is Goebbels. He would, if he could, do all the things that they've done. I mean, he's talking about termites. What do we do with termites? We gas them. So that's what he's talking about with Jews.
As long as he's not generalizing about all the blacks who surround themselves with Louis Farrakhan.
Who, once again, is not of the left.
So this is prompted by Booker saying that he would meet with Louis Farrakhan after people were getting mad at him for saying Biden should apologize for the segregationist stuff. So it's a gotcha.
There you go. Ben Stein, of course, spends a lot of time in the black community trying to figure out how everybody's feeling.
You guys used to be underdogs, is that right?
Yeah, I wonder when he thinks that stopped exactly. When did he think that systemic racism stopped? Like what year? And after which anyone who complains about it is just being a whiner.
After Barack Obama became president.
We should just address for people who don't know this, but I assume most people do, that the labor force participation rate for black people has been going down on a fairly straight trajectory through the Obama administration into the Trump administration.
All right, folks. That's all our time for today. We will see you. Oh, yeah. Listen. So tomorrow, Michael's going to do the show, and then we're going to do another show. And that is going to be the debate. We're going to be doing the debates live, both of them. They start at 9 p.m. We'll probably come on about 5-10 minutes before then. We will be drinking through the debates, I would imagine.
Without a doubt.
And we hopefully will have some guests. And so see you tomorrow, twice.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. Into years while I shifted in and out of